Dick Training.
Elby Gray Jackson.
Pete Peterson.
We need your name too, ma'am.
Jennifer Castro.
Chief.
Brian Morberg. Brian Morberg, sorry.
Okay.
And you are, young man?
I'm not Dan Moore from finance.
And Julia has just entered the room. So, Chief, I'll turn the time over to you.
Okay, so this is be a team presentation. We'll start with the PowerPoint while we're waiting for the system to come back up. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Castro. She is our communications director. This is Brian Morberg. He's our crime analyst. And a lot of what you're going to see today is public information meets crime analysis data and what we're doing with it. We're going to talk a little bit, I hope, about what we're going to do with crime analysis data on the crime solving, crime fighting side. But the main thrust of today is what it means on the public information side and what the public and you will be able to do with this new system.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that siren real or was it special effects?
That was real. Sounds like fire to me. So, you guys know something about Nixle, I hope. These are just some slides we want to run through before we get into the live bear demonstration. But Jen, I think I'll let you talk about it. It's your brainchild.
So essentially, when I was hired on, we were looking at ways for the department to communicate with the public more directly. Our website currently doesn't really provide us a timely advantage for doing that. We can only update our website 15 minutes after the hour every hour, and you also have to be physically in the APD building to do that. And as you know, a lot of the stuff that happens, major incidents, is on the weekends at 2 in the morning. So in terms of finding a way to communicate with the public directly, and in a format that they like to be communicated with, we started exploring different options that were available out there as far as a push alert notification system goes. We looked at a bunch of different products that provide this kind of a service, and Nixle is the one that we like the most. It's free for law enforcement agencies to use, and it's really easy for consumers to use. And it doesn't require anything, has nothing to do with social media whatsoever. So we get that there's still a lot of the population who isn't on Facebook or Twitter. And so we were looking for kind of an option still. A lot of people do check email on their phone and text. So Nixle is a service where you as a consumer go to Nixle.com and you provide your email and your phone number, and you decide at what level would you like to be informed. It's broken into 3 different components. There's a community news, which is stuff like events and things that APD is up to. If there's a fraud alert or a scam alert going on, we provide information about that way. There's an advisory, which we use in the sense of if there's a road closure or something that's going to potentially impact your day. And then there's an alert, which is only used in the most dire situations. If we had an Amber Alert, a mass shooter on the loose, something crazy like that. So you, when you're subscribing to this, you could say, I just want community news, or I want all of the news, and you go in directly to do that. If you want just text alerts, you can text your zip code to 888-777, and that automatically enrolls you in the text notification system. Otherwise, you just go to Nixle.com and you can sign up for email and text alerts. So
You can split that up however you want.
Yeah.
For instance, I get the alerts and advisories on my cell phone as a text message, and the community news, I just let it come to my home computer or my work computer. So
Yeah.
you just read that stuff when you're doing emails.
Yeah.
So, Chief, do you have a happy message area in deference to my colleague?
We'll create LV bites, and we'll put some of those out.
We do provide more of our positive stories. You know, when someone does something really good, we try to focus on those good Samaritan stories. There's probably only 1 out of every 10 though, but they will come, I promise you. But it's been great. We used this the other night. I was on scene at the SWAT call out, and we were ready to put gas out in the area, and there was some concern for people's well-being just because there was a lot of people outside. It was a gorgeous day out. We wanted to let people know that gas was coming in that area and could potentially drift their way because of the wind. So we put out an alert, and it went out to people's cell phone. And then what's great about this as well is it also alerts media at the same time. So media is still able to get the news releases, the press releases, but we're also alerting the public at the same time. So we're not really missing anybody out. Everybody has the opportunity now to be informed at the same time that media does, and they don't have to wait until the 5 o'clock, 10 o'clock news to get that. So that's how Nixle works.
I should tell you that every time SWAT deploys CS, I get a ton of complaints the next day. You know, people sniffed it, they went to the hospital, they have to decontaminate, they're all worried they're going to die, whatever. We didn't get one of those this time. I don't know if it's because of Nixle or not, but the public was better informed and they got prepared. They could close their windows or leave if they felt they were worried about it.
We are on social media now, and very much so. So we have a Facebook page, we also have a Twitter feed, and we're kind of using the two a little bit differently. But Facebook has been great, especially because it's more of a visual medium for photos. So we put out photos of missing people, crime prevention news, if we need suspect identification. We've done that a few times and it's been very successful. Safety alerts, yesterday morning at 5:30 in the morning, we had an 80-year-old missing gentleman who has dementia who left the hospital to go for a walk and he never returned that evening. I put out an alert on Facebook, it got tons and tons of shares, and within 2.5 hours we were able to locate him because of the alert citizens. So currently we're looking for Moto, which you've probably heard of, and so we've got his picture out there. It just goes everywhere. And people love, Anchorage is that kind of small, gossipy community, and we all like to be in each other's business. And so the community really loves social media, and they really love it from the police department, we've noticed, and they really enjoy the different crime activity news and stuff like that they're getting on the social media. They're pretty engaged with it, so that's
We've ended up with a Facebook war with the troopers over who's got the coolest car, whether our car is better than their van, and there's been pranks and hijinks going on between the two departments, and that's sort of been out there bouncing around. It gets people to see us at maybe a different light sometimes.
And then we're also on Twitter, and we use Twitter as kind of more of an immediate fashion for communicating, but generally a lot of road closure information that you'll see. When we have those huge snow days, the very few that we had, when we did have them, I would just sit in my office all day. We were just tweeting out where the next big accident was, where this road closure was, where to avoid, because we also have a lot of radio and news stations that follow our Twitter feeds as well. So when we're tweeting out like the traffic information, then the radio is putting it out to your drivers and things like that. So it's a good way to get out more immediate news, and that's how we've pretty much been using Twitter.
Every time we close the Glen Highway for a fatality of some kind, we will hear from irate Valley residents and legislators about that. We think this will help them realize, oh, don't get on the freeway. I may miss my appointment, I may be late for work, but at least I don't have to be trapped sitting on the Glen for hours, and if we can get that before they get on the highway, they can go do something else.
Yeah, and our dispatchers are also trained how to use our Twitter feed as well. So if it's something kind of late night, or if it's after our office hours, they can help and assist us too with getting information out. So they're trained up on that. So that's just a little bit about some of our public communications, and then I'll let Chief talk about Bear.
Okay, why don't you push the... So the difference, we're going to talk a little bit about Bear Analytics. Bear is the people we just had on the phone. We're telling them to turn their system back on. Sean Bear is a crime analyst turned cop turned government contractor who's developed a bunch of data mining software and algorithms and so forth to analyze intelligence for the military. Is where he started on this, but also he's turned it into analyzing crime for police departments. He has two products. RAIDS Online is the one you're going to see today. RAIDS is an acronym, Regional Analysis Information Data Sharing, or something like that. The product, that's the side that faces the public. The side that faces the police department is called Attack RAIDS, and it is more horsepower in a lot of ways. We'll try and talk a little bit about that as we go through this. One essential difference between Nixle and Bear, or RAIDS Online, is that with Nixle we are sending you what we think you need to know. With this system here, you can get on and you can find whatever you want to know. In other words, Nixle's a push, this is a pull. Okay, Nixle also though is just a notice of some kind. This is actual data, geographic data, analytical data of trends and so forth. You can get this. Is this free for you? You can get it on your computer. You can get it on your cell phone. There's a mobile app for it. Next slide. So what it starts off, the first thing you will get when you go to Anchorage, you access the RAIDS Online either by going to our website and just click at the little bandit link or by just putting it in the Google book line and going to there. You select Anchorage, immediately a map will pop up and display crime or police call activity. We'll get in later into how you specify what you want to see. I'll let Brian get into the weeds of that here in a minute. But if you click on anything that you're interested in seeing, you will get a dialog box that pops up and tells you something about that crime, the case number, what kind of event it is, some basic information about the call. It's very basic. On our level, we'll get an entire police report. You have the ability to submit a tip if you know something about that. You can submit an anonymous tip so we can help make those cases. You can sign up for reports. So let's say you have your assembly district. You want to know what happens in my assembly district every 24 hours, and I want that report delivered to me at 0800. So Brian will get into this. You can see your assembly districts. You won't be able quite yet to get that to be a polygon where you only get that data, but you could draw a circle that approximates your assembly district for right now. And then you could specify within that circle what kind of crimes you want to see, all crimes or only certain crimes, and you can say, deliver me this weekly or daily or monthly, whatever, and you just every day, you would get that view of what data you selected. You can also do density maps. We'll talk in more detail about that in a minute. And you can select different layers of data. Right now, we're just starting, and so there aren't that many layers. You can look at assembly districts. You can look at community council districts. You can look at legislative districts. Can't remember what else we have in there right now, but sooner or later we want to get to the point where you can do things like working with AWWU and IT to identify what data layers are ready to go that we can put in here. But I could foresee the day when we could say, show us ATM machine locations, all ATM machines, and all strong-arm robberies, and see if those match up. Well, we have a relationship between strong-arm robberies and ATM machines. Are the robbers hanging out by the ATMs and whacking people on the head? Well, maybe not. Let's try bus routes and strong-arm robberies. Well, look at that. All our strong-arm robbers are riding the bus. So we'll be able to look at that kind of thing in the future as we layer more GIS layers into Bear. So this just tells you how to get started, but it's very easy. Just go to Raids Online and follow the instructions, and you can sign up. As I say, it's free. So now what we're going to do, we've got our fingers crossed, the company had taken the page down for maintenance, and we called them and they said they'd put it back up. So we hope it's back up. So we can show you the live demonstration. What you're getting here is we have two systems at the APD. We have CAD, that's computer-aided dispatch, and we have RMS, which is the records management system. On the public-facing side, you're accessing what records management does is it uploads to Bear every 24 hours. So when you go to Raids Online, you're looking at data that's resident on Bear's server farm. You're not getting into behind our firewall, but you're seeing our data. And so it's as fresh as 24 hours old.
I can probably do it from the slides. We can't get online.
You want to call them back and tell them the people that control the money in this town, who will authorize future contracts, are unable to see their product?
What's your employee?
Is that coercion, Chief?
Pardon you?
Do you have Susan's number?
That way. I know.
So right now, there's 2 years worth of data. The data is, as I say, anywhere from 24 to hours old to 2 years old. By the time the conversion is done, probably later this summer, we'll be going back to, I think, 1998 or 99. So you'll have many years worth of data to look at. On our side, it accesses CAD data as well as records management data. CAD data is fresher, but it's not scrubbed data yet. The police reports aren't in there yet, it hasn't been classified, it's subject to change. But our goal is to get to where we're uploading to Bear every 4 hours or so. So patrol officers will come in, they'll get this on the laptop before they hit the street, They can go to hotspots and update it during their shift. They can find out what's been happening, what's been trending in their beats. With really fresh data that's only 4 hours old. So what happened on the last shift, what's happened in the last 24 hours.
Probably gonna have that.
What did it say?
She's checking.
So, the other thing that we can do, I'm going to just wing this without being able to show you the pictures until we get this running. We can, on our side, we can do predictive policing. Not every category of crime lends itself to this sort of thing, but there are kinds of crime. Burglaries is one where burglars typically have a discernible MO. This can track our cases, track the MO. It's reading all the fields in our reports, and it's reading the narratives, looking for commonalities and making relationships. And so it might develop a suspect. We may have 10 burglary cases that have similar MO. We've got a name associated with only one of those, so it'll tell us the suspect we're looking for. We're looking for him in actually 10 different burglaries. Based on his pattern, this is where we can expect to catch him. Look for him within the circle between 2 and 4 p.m. on next Tuesday, and you got an 83.25% chance to catch him. You want a better chance, so you're going to broaden the circle. You want a tighter circle, you're going to lower the chance, and it calculates all that for you. Some of the other things that we do is we can do change maps. Change maps, they look like density maps, but what they are is they've got cold colors for crime is going away and warm colors for crime is growing. This isn't exactly it, but it's sort of like that. So an example would be, this is showing you what crime occurred. And with a change map, we don't necessarily need to know the number of crimes, just where did it go away and where did it grow. So for instance, you take the day we shut down the Inlet Inn, and this is what example we ran. We know what that day is at the time we ran it. Let's say it was 3 months afterwards. So we said, give us a 3-month before and after shot centered on this day. And then where there's cool colors, greens going to blues going to purples is where crime went away. If there's no color, that's where crime didn't change at all. And if it's oranges going to, yellows going to orange going to red, that's where crime is growing. So when we shut down the Inlet Inn, we get this big sinkhole of crime right over there and no associated spikes anywhere else. So in other words, crime went away. It just went away. We did the same thing with the Covenant House move. It confirmed our suspicions. There was no change in crime either way associated with that move. They were never the problem. Crime didn't grow. Crime didn't go away. It just stayed the same. If you go down and look at our work at 13th and Gamble, you will see that crime is going away at 13th and Gamble, but it's popping up at 15th and Gamble. We just push it down to the black angles. That's called displacement. So what this does is it gives us ability to work a project for a few days or maybe a week or two and then see if we're doing any good or not. Because if we are doing good, we'll know it right away and we can do more of that same kind of effort. But if we find out we're not doing any good, we haven't invested a lot of money. We can find out very quickly that what we're doing isn't making any difference, and so we better change our tactics, change our approach. So it's a very cost-effective way for us to figure out really quickly what we're doing and whether we're doing it right. And also to try and do those things in the locations where we can make an impact, because the trend data will tell us that's where the action is.
The company that hosts their server had an outage. So they said it would be up 10 minutes ago, but they are at the mercy of the company that is hosting the server. They don't have the ability to bring it up right now. They are trying to do it as fast as they can. I can talk to it as best as possible. I can use the images that are in the PowerPoint and kind of discuss from there. So
I'm going to let Brian wing it for me.
I've seen that PowerPoint, it's good.
We always have a backup plan.
okay. Well, my name is Brian Warburg. I'm a crime analyst for the department. Sorry we aren't able to do this live. Like I said, the server is down right now, so we can't get into it. This is the basic screen that you will see though when you get online with Raids Online. Just to get to it is www.raidsonline, and it gives you several options to be able to not only map the crime data, but then filter it somewhat so that you can look at it in the way that you want to look at it. Down there, the ways that you can filter it, you can see there's a series of tabs, pull-down menus on the side here, and there's a series of tabs up top. Where you can see it says jump to city there. There's 3 ways you can get to Anchorage. When you first pull it up, it pulls it up and you're looking at right in the middle of the US. So you can either drag it down, and all the states that are on the US map that are highlighted, shaded in, they have somebody within that state that is providing data. So it's a regional solution. So we don't just look at our data, we can actually look at other states, other cities' data, and not just their filter data that they're putting out to the public. Our version of attack rates also allows us to look at reports from other jurisdictions. So if we have a case that we're working where we need to see if we can find information, links down to lower 48, this is another source of data we can look at. So you can click on the shaded state. You can, up top, you can type, there's an address bar where you can type in any address. And then you can also jump to city, Anchorage, alphabetically, we're right up top. So you just click on that, Anchorage is there, and you click on it, it brings you right to, right about here is where it brings you to, which is what Google Earth considers the geographic center of Anchorage. By default, when it comes up, it looks at the FBI's uniform Part 1 crimes. So homicide, sexual assault, robbery, theft, that type of thing, arson. And burglary, correct.
And vehicle theft.
Vehicle theft. Brings those up first, but you have the option by clicking on the event tab to select any number of crimes. The old crime mapping system we had about 20-ish categories. We've released information because of the ability of the software to publish a lot of other crimes. So you click on that and it gives you a long list of crime types that you can select. And those are generic-ish crime types. Like for instance, there's one on there that's for liquor violations. That could be a minor consuming alcohol, that could be a liquor law violation, it could be any number of things. But you'll have other ways to filter out that information further that I'll talk about. What the chief said about being able to select a particular area. If you type in, if it's any address you could type in, so a cross street, any kind of address that you could type into Google Earth, you can type into this and it will zoom to that particular location. And then you can put a buffer around it that will filter out anything anywhere from 500 feet up to 5 miles. So it'll put a buffer around that address, and then you can tell it, I only want to see crime within that buffer. So it'll kick everything else out. That's beneficial because one of the limitations of the software is it can only have up to 500 incidents on the screen at any one time. So if you try to tell this to look at theft for Anchorage for an entire year, it will only show you 500 thefts. So you need to use these tools to be able to kind of focus down to the data that you really want to look at. Events, like I said, you can select different types of events there. The offenders tab, that's right below the events. That is something that does not work in Anchorage, Alaska. There are other, what that is for sex offenders. So Bear Analytics subscribes to a service called Offender Watch, which is a service that several communities on Lower 48 subscribe to. We do not. That's managed by the state and published on their website. And at this time, we don't have the ability to get that data fed into this.
However, this last week I spoke with trooper commanders about doing whatever they need to do to upload their state sex offender stuff into the national database so that Bear and other technologies that we're aware of can access it. Right now, a lot of states get their data from there, and we're not able to do some things that some states can do, including this. They're looking into it. May take some regulation change, and they may be out of compliance with their own regulations right now. So they got a little work to do, but they're willing to go in that direction.
If you do click on it right now, though, however, when you bring it up and you click the little checkbox that says offenders, you will see 1 or 2 icons pop up in Anchorage. That's somebody who lived in the community in Lower 48, registered somewhere in Lower 48, but claimed an address up here. So the map put a couple of dots in Anchorage. I've already talked with the state on those 2 particular offenders because they were interested to know, is this somebody that's in our, no, it's not even somebody that's registered with the state up here. So it's somebody that registered in Lower 48 that claimed an address up here. So it doesn't work yet, but we're definitely working towards that.
Try it now, Brian. It's working now.
Oh, is it? Awesome.
Oh, it's almost there.
Yeah, it's working. All right.
All right.
All right, now I can stop dancing quite so much. All right, so this is what I was talking about. When you bring it up first, it brings you to the map of the US. It has a little disclaimer. You have to say, yes, I agree to look at this information. All these states that are shaded in have some information that's somebody within that state is providing crime data to Bear Analytics. When you click on Alaska, there's a little pop-up window. Click on Anchorage, and it takes you to what it considers the geographic center of Anchorage. And like I said, it populates it with those Part 1 crimes to begin with by default, and it looks at a 2-week time period. You want to filter out information. You can tell it to go to a particular address, say your home, business, a cross street, whatever. And then you can tell it, I want to put a buffer around it, and I only want to look at crimes within a half a mile. Half a mile, 500 feet all the way up to 5 miles, you can choose. And then when you click on this, it gets rid of everything that's not within that buffer. So it makes it nice for looking at data. And that's the kind of thing that you will set up when you want to set up personal crime alerts. You can set up, click on here, set up crime alerts, type in your information, your email address, how often, what the radius of that buffer is that we just selected, how often you want to get these reports, and what crimes you're concerned about. What do you want to know about? Say, I have one that's set for my home. It sends me one every day. That tells me that still no crimes going on in my neighborhood, but I'm happy with that. And then you can tell it what time of day you want. You want it before you go to work, whatever. Sign up, and of course it's not going to let me do that because I didn't put in an email address. And you start getting these notices in your email box that tell you almost like an Excel type looking tabulation. All right, so the events I was telling you about, quite a few more than what we had before. Everything from assault, burglary, homicide, disorderly conduct, and then all other criminal and non-criminal. So you can click on any of these or none of these, and it will filter out what you see on the map. Like I said, let me get rid of that buffer real quick. It can only show up to 500 incidents at a time. And usually for Anchorage, for just those Part 1 crimes, we don't hit that 500 crime buffer or limit. But if you do, you'll have a little message down here that says displaying 500 of how many were there. All right, so I'm going to leave those chronotypes on there so we can go back down here. I'll show you that offender tab. Click on it. I believe it'll put a little purple icon up in here somewhere. And it's covered up by all these other ones. But that doesn't work. Date range. So you can tell it what data you want, what date range you want to look at. Currently, like the chief said, we've got 2 years worth of data in there back to 2012. The goal is once they've uploaded all of our data, it's going to go all the way back to 1998. So you can do some historical research if you want to. You can tell it, I want a predefined date range. You can tell it specifically what days you want to check. And you can also use a little time slider. So there's several ways you can access the date range that you want. Time slider. Another big upgrade over our old crime analysis, our crime mapping software. Something that I had to do if we wanted it done was to do density maps. Let me zoom in a little bit so that it looks a little better. So you click on that, and it tells you where the greatest concentration of whatever crime type that you're interested in. If you want to know where liquor violations are happening, or sexual assaults, or thefts, or theft from auto, we can do this.
You could specify liquor violations and sexual assaults and see if there's a relationship between them.
And then if you, oh, sorry, Chief.
Contributing the same density.
And if you want to be able to look at this once all that's populated, you just say deselect, and it will leave the density map on there for you so you can see what the concentration is. And honestly, for some of the presentations that I create, if I want to save this map for something, I just have to do a capture screen, and you can export that to wherever you need it. So let me put those maps back up in there, or at least put some of them on there. And one of the nice things about this analysis tool is it's flexible. When I had to do density maps previously, I would have to calculate the cell size and how big is each cell around each incident, and there was a little bit of math you had to do to create those. Here, you just zoom in and tell it you want to recalculate. It puts up the old density map. Tell it to recalculate, and it will readjust based on the data that's in there. The resolution is simply how jagged these edges are. You can crank up the resolution if you want. Okay, data layers. This is something that is provided by Bear Analytics. Actually, they get it from Esri, which is the company that provides the base map they have. And what these will do is put up, similar to the layers that we have, it'll put up some geographic boundaries based on, so say diversity, gender, governmental units, and it will turn that density map off, so it's not, so that it just comes up. So population density, it will put up a set of geographic boundaries, and if you click on these, that's the kind of thing you're going to get. It'll tell you what this area of that boundary is, but they don't have any information behind it. They've been having some issues with Esri trying to get information published into that, and this is one of the things that if they can't get resolved, they're going to just take that feature off altogether, so that if there are layer files, it's ones that are provided by the agency. So I'm going to turn that off so you can see what our layer files are. Okay, these are the ones that we provided to Bear Analytics for publishing. So anything from our beats to the House and Senate districts, community council districts, and assembly districts. And what it does is, just like the other one, it draws, layers those up there. When you click on these, it at least tells you what the assembly area is. And if you want to focus in on that, then you can zoom in on it. At this point, they are not able to use these boundaries as a searchable feature. But that's something that with Bear Analytics, what I've found so far is that if we've made suggestions, asked them to add features, they've been pretty good about it. They added a feature to our version where we're able to draw on the law enforcement only, so I can use a polygon, I can basically a drawing tool around the boundary. They weren't able to add it to the public version, but I've asked them to make these searchable features. So it's something that said they're working on, but it's going to take a while to get it up there.
Hopefully you'll be able to search in essentially cover by your assembly district. But in the meantime, what you could do is you could draw a circle and make that circle kind of approximate your boundaries, and it wouldn't be perfect, but it would give you a fairly good idea of what's happening in your districts.
Right. If you can type in an address here so that it moves this from 4501 Elmore to somewhere in the center of this, then it would at least draw a circle around that, and then filter out most of the rest of Anchorage. All right, so these are, about raids online, that's simply information about the company itself. So if you want to learn a little more about that, you can look at this, or you can go to their website, bearanalytics.com. Okay, so that's one way to look at this. Another way to filter data, let's see if I can get this to work here. Yep. Is the data grid. Everything that is within the map is contained within the data grid and vice versa. The data grid is essentially a tabular version, almost an Excel-looking version of what you saw on the map. So all those little pop-up windows, I didn't even bring up the pop-up window for you. It's basically what we saw with on PowerPoint. You click on any one of these incidents, it brings up a pop-up window that says information about the report number, crime type, submitting an anonymous tip, something that wasn't on the PowerPoint. If you'll notice down here, it says this point has been randomly offset at the request of the agency to protect victim privacy. If there are any crime types that have a victim that require some kind of privacy, we have asked Bear Analytics to do their random offset to it. And what that does is up to 600 feet that point on the map you see here will be offset from the actual point.
It could be 0, or it could be 100 feet, or it could be 300 feet. And it recalculates that every time you ask for the data in a different way, so those things move around. And this distance here is distance from wherever that target value was, in this case, the police department.
Sorry, Chief, that's actually not.
What is that
distance?
then?
That's distance from what they consider the city center.
Okay.
Well, it's either the city center or whatever the last address you typed in. So I believe, since I clicked down here, it's 3.79 miles, it's probably 3.79 miles to the
Yeah,
left.
that's what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay, never mind then, Chief. I will disregard. Data grid. So what this is a tabular version of what you saw in that pop-up window. And one of the nice things about this is, if you know, remember I said, like say with liquor law violations, alcohol violations, I'll add that to the map. So that's going to add it to it in the background, and I only want to look at certain kinds of liquor law violations. So I can tell it, I can use it as a filter. Anything that's in one of these tabs can be filtered by. And now it's only going to bring up those alcohol violations that were liquor violations. If it was a minor consuming alcohol, it kicks it out. If it was a drunk transport, it kicks it out. If I only want to look at drunk transports, I can filter by the word transport and it will kick everything else out. So it gives you a lot more freedom, even though we had to put a lot of these into general categories, especially the all other non-criminal and all other criminal. As you go through those and look at it, you can look at the information that you want to see.
So it gets you to drill down, but the icon may give you a class of crimes. But up here, you can get into that class and you can break it down into any of its component pieces and see the data.
So like we said, say we wanted to look at only liquor violations that happen on Boniface. I can also then filter by that one as well, and it will get everything that isn't on Boniface. If you want to look at all your collisions that happen on Lake Otis, you can go into the category that has collisions, get into your address, say I only want to look at Lake Otis, and then it gets rid of everything else. So it gives you quite a bit of freedom to search through your own data.
Then if you go back to the map, does visual display reflect what you just put on the chart?
And there you see, you only have one incident, and that's where it was at.
So in other words, if you could look at all traffic accidents, you'd see them all over town. Then you go into the analytics and say, just show me traffic accidents on Lake Otis, filter that, go back to your map, and then the only dots would be the dots on Lake Otis.
And you'll notice on this one that this alcohol violation there's a victim that required privacy, so that dot is exactly where the incident occurred. Same thing with DUIs and traffic citations and things like that. Those are all as they are on the map, or they are mapped where they're supposed to be. Now you'll notice, I'm trying to get used to not using a touchscreen. My home computer is a touchscreen. I keep wanting to touch this thing. All right, let me zoom out a little bit. Now you notice, see if it should not show anymore because I filtered my address. It shows up here a number 2. That's because I have 2 filters that I'm currently using. So if I ever want to go, and okay, I've looked at this, now I want to go click on something else besides alcohol violation, I have to clear those filters or all I'm going to see are things with liquor and Boniface. So I clear that out and it brings everything else back up. Now that I've brought everything else out, now that you've seen the data grid and how you can filter through it, and these are pretty much all the categories. On our version, we have a lot more categories, a lot more columns. Method of entry, point of entry, person information. So we can really drill down into the data, and as well as the narratives that are within the reports. So if I want to look through all of our thefts, or even I don't want to limit it to thefts, I want to look at all incidents that involves the word copper, because I'm interested in copper theft. I can search the narratives, and it will bring up any incident that had the word copper in it. Even if it was a copper-colored vehicle, okay, I have to filter that out of my results, but it really gives us the ability to do targeted research. In the analytics, the public version has 4 charts that it will bring up on crime. So crime class, I can bring these up a little larger so you can see them. Tells you for that particular area what, you put your cursor over it, it tells you how many there were and what percentage of crime that is within your area.
That's within the area and the time frame you specify. If you change any of those, then these charts are going to change.
Correct. Like, all of these are tied together. So like the chief said, if I go here and I change my date range, that I only want to look at, or I want to look at the last month of data, it automatically recalculates everything and changes the data for me. Now I'm asking for a month, so it's probably going to be over 500. And like the map, it will only show up to 500 crimes. So you have to try to keep it under 500 if you want a representation. It also shows here crime as they're happening by day of week. And all of these you can make larger if you want to try to capture screenshots from them. Time of day incidents are happening, so over a period of time, what has they're occurring over days, where your spikes, where your trends are occurring. Now, this is not quite as useful right now because we're having some issues with getting our data into Bear Analytics. What this does is it looks at the time of day an incident occurred and the day of week it occurred. And then what that allows us to do when it's working correctly, and I've done this with Bear Analytics where it was working correctly, where this little hotspot that it shows right here, right now it's saying that most of the events that we have up here are occurring on Wednesday at midnight. Well, right now we're having an issue where all of our times are going in as happening as midnight. So everything is happening at midnight according to Bear Analytics right now. Once we get that settled, what it does is it gives us the ability to say, okay, now that we know geographically where incidents are happening, we can look at the map, it tells us where. Now this tells us when. When is our peak activity occurring? By day and hour. So it's really a good tool.
You will be able to see, for instance, I would predict, although I don't know for sure, but if you specified only burglaries, you might find people always think burglars go around in the middle of the night. Mostly they go in the middle of the day when everybody's at work. So your residential burglaries anyway are going to probably show a 2 in the afternoon sort of thing. Your commercial burglaries, now those might occur at night. So depending on how you spec the search, you're going to see the hotspot and the temporal chart move around.
The public version has 4 charts. The law enforcement only version, we have, I want to say, upwards of 200 plus charts that are available to us. So it really gives us the ability to look at a lot of different types of data. This, also the public version, only provides incidents, which is any crime that a report was generated in. So that was a more accurate way of saying, okay, there are a lot of calls that show up that a report doesn't occur. So our data also looks at calls for service. So we can look at where our calls are going to, what types of calls, where we're getting the information at. And then there are several of these charts that are catered specifically to calls for service type of data versus incident data, and allows us to really drill down into the information.
On our side, we can do worker performance on this. We can say, show me the police activity for Officer Jones. Show me how much time he's on a call. Show me how many calls he's taken and where they are. So we can calculate response times, show us all the calls. We do response times? No, we talked about that.
Response times should be on here. As far as the calls for service data that's going in there is the time the call was received, the time the call was dispatched, and the time the call officer was on scene, and when the last officer cleared. So there are 4 times that are going to go into this.
So there's a way we can use this to track our own productivity and figure out who's working hard and who isn't. Or, it might be a function of the employee's energy, or it might be the area that the employee is working in. Different areas of town, some are busier, some aren't. You might see different kind of activity. The guy in a rural area or gal might write more tickets but handle fewer calls. Person in a high density thing is probably going to handle a lot more calls, write fewer tickets. So it gives us the ability to sit down with the employee and say, let's talk about your work, and see how we can make sure we're doing reasonable things and addressing the right problems in our areas. The other thing that this does, I hate to interrupt you, I can't show you this, but Bear is not only analyzing, as you can tell, most of this data lends itself to coming out of fields on the police reports. You know, there's all these little things they say: time of day, day of week, type of weapon, type of what's stolen, you know, blah, blah, blah. But they also are drilling into the narratives, and they're drilling into the narratives of every police report written by every cop in every department that buys into Bear. You can imagine that's millions of police reports, and they're going through the narratives. And if the computer decides that all of a sudden cops are writing a certain word in the report more frequently, then it calls it to Bear's attention, and they do an analysis of that, trying to figure out, is this something that's changing that we need to be aware of? And it's not being captured in the field because we don't have a field name for it. As a nation, we're not even aware that this thing should be tracked by a field. So brown wire is an example. Brown wire starts showing up in the narratives of police reports in the southeast portion of the country. Turns out, if you read some of those reports, it's a component of improvised explosive devices that are starting to show up. The bomb techs and dismantling this stuff, they're dutifully writing down what all the components are, and brown wire is starting to increase. So now they plot the trajectory of the spread of brown wire in police reports. And they can pretty soon say, well, it's in Georgia and Florida right now, and it's in Alabama, and you guys in the Midwest, you're going to see brown wire in February, and you guys on the western seaboard, you're going to see it in November, and Alaska, 2 years, you're going to start seeing brown wire. So it gives us a chance to predict what's coming. They predicted the movement of ninja rocks, of catalytic converter thefts. I don't know if they predicted spice or not, but we maybe could have seen that coming. I don't know if we would have been able to do anything about it, but we'll get a...
Amy's got a question, Chief.
What are ninja rocks?
Ninja rocks are the little pieces of ceramic that the kids take out of spark plugs, and then you throw it at a car window, and it shatters, has a property such that without making any noise, it shatters the glass very quietly, and you can reach in and unlock the car, and you can steal the stereo or whatever, and they'll go through neighborhoods just... And the residents, it's not like a pellet gun that makes a loud noise that they can hear. It's not like smashing out with a crowbar or something. And so they'll do, vehicle thefts.
I've never heard of that term before, Chief.
No, Mr. Chairman, I
Well,
think
we don't have any of those
I think I could
activities,
hang out
right?
with him for an afternoon and learn all kinds of new things.
Yeah.
Well, we have ninja rocks here.
So it's what the ceramic portion of spark plug?
Yeah. You dismantle the spark plug and throw the ceramic.
Is it that heavy that it shatters the glass?
I don't know why it does that. It's weird.
You're saying the breakage, you don't hear the breakage, do you hear the glass falling and stuff like that?
No, you don't. It doesn't. I don't know what. If it just makes a little hole that they can reach through, so there's not a lot of glass. I don't
It
know.
probably
But-
shatters, I mean.
But I know that the kids have been doing it for a while. But the point is, you don't have a field that cops would, and they're saying, type of projectile thrown at a car window. But in the narrative, the cops are saying what they saw. They went through and they're finding.
On the seat or something.
Yeah, they interviewed these guys and they said, what the hell, oh, we're doing ninja rocks, so they're writing this in there, and cops saying, what the hell's a ninja rock? And, we did. So one guy writes that in, the cops around the country are finding that, and so Bear is tracking the fact that it's growing in popularity and can project its arrival in different other regions.
Amy's got another question for you, sir.
So I'm assuming you've already started utilizing the data that you're gathering and some of the different graphs and all the different stuff you're using. Are you actively doing this, or is this?
We have not rolled this out to patrol yet, although we need to start doing that now. We've been testing it. This part is easy, so we started by talking to the public part amongst the public, people like you. This is more complicated on our side. We have to, and we want to make sure that it's tested and running and we can rely on it before we sell it to the troops and then find out that we got glitches. So what we really want to do is we're kind of trying this out on the simple part with the public, find out what's working and what isn't. Already Brian's told you there's some things here that are maybe not ready for prime time. But we plan on conducting training and rolling this out sooner rather than later. I think this summer we're going to start to see this thing being used in patrol. And as our staffing comes back up, we've got 3 different academies in various stages of moving through. When our guys start coming back, you think back to the perf report, for those of you who were around back then, we're trying to get to 30% unobligated time on the shifts. What will they do with that 30% unobligated time? Well, they can do problem-oriented policing partnership projects, but they can also now run Bear Analytics and find out what their hotspots are in their area and turn those into enforcement projects, and they can do it like that. So with their free time, we expect them to be using tools like this to figure out a smarter way to get to the bottom of what trouble they're having in their beats. Now, we roll this out, it sounds really cool to them, but if they got no unobligated time, if they're running call to call to call to call, then this is an academic exercise. That's why we haven't been in too big a hurry to roll it out, because I don't know, practically speaking right now, how much free time anybody has on the shifts. But as these academies start getting cut loose, the expectation is we're going to be using this every day to drive what we do when we're not on a call.
Chief, what's the cost to the city of this?
$7,000 a year and change. Do you remember the exact number?
I can get the exact.
It's roughly 7,000 and change a year for a 3-year contract. And this being paid for by asset forfeiture money. You're going to see on Tuesday night, you'll have the opportunity to let us appropriate some more asset forfeiture money, but this is the kind of thing that we can do with those funds. Stuff that's nice to have that's not in our budget. And so really the dope dealers are paying for this, not the taxpayer.
Good, they won't be complaining. Questions from Assembly members? We got about 3 minutes left. Anything from the Assembly members? Pete, anything?
There was just one more thing.
Yes, Tim.
I'm just wondering if the upper echelon, if the leadership is looking at it now to see any trends that are a surprise. Have you seen anything surprising in the data you've seen so far?
Oh, well, yeah. Here's one thing that we found out. First of all, there's some stuff we hope to find out, like the impact of the move of Covenant House. Did we do any good at when we took down, boarded up, and leveled the inlet in? But here's the conundrum to this stuff. We want to see we want to measure our effectiveness in town square. Okay, guess what? According to this, there's no crime in town square. You know why that is? Nobody calls the police. What they do is they write hostile and sarcastic emails to me and copy all of you guys, but nobody's picking up the phone and dialing dispatch. So this only knows what people will report. So we probably will never get everybody to report everything we want them to, but we try all the time. I'm talking to Chris Schulte and others about calling this stuff. Even if people say, well, the cops won't come, they won't come in time. It doesn't matter. We need to get a tick mark into the system so we can see where our problems are. Now, we can also, we can run focus projects. We could get, say, a bunch of people from the Justice Center and send them down there with their iPhones, and they look like they're just text messaging, but really what they're doing is they're counting crimes. And then we can use that as a baseline. Then we can run an operation in Town Square Park. Then we can send it back in and collect some more data, and we can look and see whether we did it. So we can artificially feed the system if we know we've got the kind of problem where the system isn't being fed by citizens. So it's going to be a learning curve, and it's going to take us a while to figure out how to maximize this. We've developed our new Constat model. We call it Aurora. A lot of the analytics, a lot of the slides, a lot of the trends that we're looking at in our new Aurora meetings that drive our deployment and our strategies on the street are coming out of there. Not all of them. Some come from other places, including our budget and other things. But the Aurora presentation would be a different topic we could get into. But we are trying to use real data and fresh data to make decisions. The thing about this data is it's young. We are not like looking at, pretty soon we'll publish our UCR report. It's 2014. We will be telling you what happened in 2013 and how that compares to the last 20 years. I mean, that is so rear view mirror. Now, that's good if we want to figure out what does our budget need to do over the next 5 years, how many cops are we going to need, what are the big trends of crime in Anchorage, but it doesn't help the cops catch anybody, okay? So think of the UCR as strategic crime analysis that people like you and I use to decide the future of the department. Think of Bear Analytics as tactical crime analysis that a cop is going to use to arrest a bad guy. Brian, you were championing the big, say one other thing.
One of the things is I wanted to make sure that you knew that every sworn officer, we have enough licenses that every sworn officer has access to this anywhere they have access to the internet. So they can access this information currently only if they are at the station, a substation, a school, someplace where they have a Wi-Fi hotspot. If they had access to internet in their vehicles, then they could access this wherever they're at.
And we'll get there one day. This is a work in progress, and it will grow and get bigger and become better as we get used to driving it and figure out how to maximize it.
Well, I want to thank the police department for being here. We've got to end this work session now. The next one on audit starts right now.
Right. Can I make one comment, Mr.
Go
Chairman?
ahead, Emily.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But no, I just want to say thank you to Jennifer, Chief, and I forgot your name.
Brian.
Thank you, Brian, very much for this presentation. I love this piece of technology. And you gave this same presentation to the Public Safety Committee last week, and you talked about the fact that you're also talking to community councils too. So I think that's a great thing.
We're going to talk to school principals, and we're going to talk to everybody we
Great,
can.
great, thank
And we
you.
hope you folks will help tell your constituents when they call with questions, turn them on to this. Say, go to Bear, check it out. And if you still have a problem, then call us or call you or whatever. But start using it yourself and encouraging your constituents to get in there and drive it. And let us know what's not working, because we want to identify bugs and get them fixed.
Good creative use.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for being here.